following scripture quotations are taken from the Holy Bible, New Living Translation, copyright by Tyndale House Foundation, used by permission of Tyndale House Publishers, all rights reserved. Hi, I'm Peachy Pie. Welcome back to my channel, though that is not my real name, and this is a mini applause for you. So why did you get a mini applause? Because you deserve it and because you are awesome. And you are awesome because no matter what you're going through, whatever's happening around you, whatever's happening to you, whatever situation you are in, you are here and you made it. So you get a mini applause. And since you made it through yesterday and you made it through today, and you'll probably make it through tomorrow, why don't you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you can be here tomorrow when I post another video. Now the topic that we're going to look at today is guilt. We are looking at guilt, and we are specifically looking at how guilt is a weapon that keeps people in situations of abuse and domestic violence. So take this as your trigger warning. This video does contain depictions of discussion around rape and around guilt and abuse. So if you feel uncomfortable, you are welcome to pop off this video at any time. I do make other videos that are not abuse related. And also there's the entirety of YouTube to retreat to if you so feel the need. But thank you for joining me, and you are very, very appreciated. Let's get into it. Okay, first thing we're talking about is victim guilt. So on a page from the US Department of Justice, the following was written about victims of rape. Although rape victims often sustain minor physical injuries, the emotional damage is far greater, and the threat of physical injury adds to the emotional impact. Studies have shown that the feeling of fear and helplessness which is present during the act itself is replaced by guilt and self-blame immediately afterwards, which may linger for years and hamper full emotional recovery. The women who suffer most from these guilt feelings are those who have been severely abused, with prior emotional problems, with strict religious backgrounds, prescribing non-marital sexual relations, or those who are secretive about their experience. The reason why the rape victim blames herself rather than her assailant is that women in general have been socialized in a sexist society and have internalized discriminatory norms. This internalization takes place through the family, where women are defined as relatively powerless and inferior. Through economic dependence and through media reinforcement of the stereotypes, the sexual double standard has to be removed from our society so that women can become more assertive. So what we're seeing is that rape victims often internalize the blame after being raped. And it's really sad because we would say to a rape victim, no, you're not the guilty one, you didn't do anything. But that's not going to stop somebody that's been abused or someone that's being raped from feeling guilty for that rape, which is one of the reasons why rape and other kind of domestic violence issues are so horrible, because the victims tend to take the blame. Anyway, an article from domesticshelters.org notes that trauma-related guilt often stems from a feeling that a survivor could have done something more or differently during a traumatic event. Could they have prevented it, stopped it, fought back, loved their partner more? None of these are true, by the way. Abuse is never a survivor's fault, nor is it in a survivor's control to stop it. Any advocate will attest that abusers make clear and concise decisions to abuse, how they do it, when to do it, and who to do it to. Domestic abuse is not an argument where one person flies off the handle unexpectedly. Abuse is a pattern of power and control repeated many times over. And it also says that trauma-related guilt can weigh heavily on a survivor, resulting in depression, low self-esteem, shame, social anxiety, and thoughts of suicide. And feelings of guilt can often lead to PTSD or complex PTSD, or it could be a side effect of them. This was really hard research to do and really hard to read, to be honest with you. It was so heartbreaking because we can see the effect of abuse on our society and on people, but there's just not nearly enough that has been done to tackle these issues and help victims. Yeah. And an article from Reconciliation Ministries actually points out that unfortunately, even though abuse survivors would loudly proclaim the freedom of guilt to others who have suffered abuse, they seldomly apply this truth to themselves. Now, some victims may also feel guilt for other reasons, like guilt for leaving the abusive relationship. They might feel guilt for not leaving or for not leaving soon enough. They might also feel guilty for not recognizing the signs of abuse in their relationship. They also might feel guilty for being too afraid to speak out, or for dissociating, which is when you are sort of like pretending that you are somewhere else or you are in a different place when abuse is taking place in your home. That's dissociation. And the reason why victims do that is so that they can sort of lessen the pain of what is happening to them. So this clearly shows you how traumatic abuse is for a victim. Now, let's talk about abusers, right? Abusers can actually use guilt as a weapon, right? So in that same article from Reconciliation Ministries, it points out that abusers seem to have the uncanny ability to know who to target and how they can get away with abusing victims. The tactics of abusers are to blame the victim, right? We've heard that saying all the time, that if she didn't behave in a certain way, then I wouldn't hit her. If he didn't do that, then I wouldn't do this to him, etc., etc. Right? Now, the abuser does not acknowledge their guilt. They may even be in denial of the abuse. And there are conditions or certain times or periods when an abuser might feel guilt, but more often that's associated with an abuser feeling guilty, and fear of being caught in the action of abusing someone else. Social worker Wendy James actually said the following in an interview. She said, in other words, abuse, doesn't stop, and I believe at that very moment they may really want it to stop. Some of them may just be manipulative and say that and make promises that they don't ever intend to keep. Some really want to, but they need help and counseling in order to do it. In other words, in order to stop abusing a victim. On the other hand, there's people who have mental illnesses, that have impulse control problems and issues, and they may need medication and intervention in that form. So there is something else quite interesting that I found about abusers. There's a whole page of this anonymous confessions of recovering abusers, which I will definitely link in the description, and I really, really advise you to check it out. So listen to this. This is from that page, right? It's obviously anonymous. Someone wrote, but I think that I was in a kind of denial about accepting the label of emotional abuser because I had never actually been physically abusive. And the examples of domestic abuse that we see and hear about in the media always seem to be examples of physical abuse. So it was pretty easy to tell myself that I was not an abuser because I had never caused any physical harm to anyone, and it was easy to dismiss any complaints or concerns as my ex just being overly sensitive, right? I think I was so oblivious to my role as an abuser, or so unwilling to accept it, that I was anything other than the nice guy who looked good on paper to my ex and to everyone else in my life, that I was frequently able to recast my guilt as a form of victimhood, or to split the blame by labeling the entire relationship toxic. So yeah, that article is actually called Your Stories of Emotional Abuse, Confessions of an Abuser, and please check it out. I would sincerely suggest that you check it out. It's quite an amazing article about how people realized after their relationships that they were abusive and their road to recovery. I think it's really good. We are going to talk about abusers more in depth in another video, so don't stress. Abusers, we're coming for you. Anyway, so let's talk about how society treats victims and abusers. Jess Hill, author of See What You Made Me Do, said the following in an article for The Guardian. Right? By the time victims realize the danger they're in, many believe no system will ever be powerful enough to keep them safe. If they do report to police, if something reportable actually occurs, right, they are making a terrifying gamble. Will they get an officer who's sympathetic and proactive? Will reporting their partner make him more dangerous? What if child protection gets involved? What if he contests for custody? There are absolutely no guarantees that they or their children will be protected. Their suspicion that the system is not powerful enough to protect them is too often correct. The justice system is not only full of holes, too often it actively colludes with the perpetrator, especially in the family law system. So they stay even after they want to leave and know it's dangerous. They stay because it may be even more dangerous to leave, until the justice system properly assesses and responds to risk. And as long as women are made to be responsible for their own safety, we will continue to see an intractable domestic homicide rate. Thousands of years of patriarchy has laid pretty good groundwork for this. And it's not so long since a wife was considered her husband's property and had no legal rights whatsoever. It was only in the 1980s that new laws against marital rape recognized that men didn't have the right to demand sex with their wives anytime they wanted. Prior to that, consent was considered to have been given on the wedding day and never revoked. Sometimes reading these articles. Anyway, today we still live in a society that entrenches women's subordination at every level, from the home to the boardroom to our parliament. Even in the courtroom, as we see so often, as the Harvard psychiatrist Judith Herman writes, the legal system is designed to protect men from the superior power of the state, but not to protect women or children from the superior power of men. I'm sure any survivor reading this will know exactly what she's talking about. Men don't abuse women because society tells them it's okay. Men abuse women because society tells them they are entitled to be in control. In fact, society says that if they are not in control, they won't succeed. They won't get the girl, they won't get the money, and they will be vulnerable to the violence and control of other men. It says that if they fail to assert themselves like real men, they will end up poor and alone. What a wonderful state our society is in. But here's the thing. It's our responsibility to stand up and start doing stuff. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But that's the reality of what's happening right now. You can pretend or you can think to yourself, no, women's rights, whatever, blah, right? Because I've spoken to men that are like, why do women need to have rights? Women are getting more jobs than men right now and all of these things. Why are these feminists going on like that? But the reality is that on a fundamental level, men are still in positions of power, and men are still in positions in which they have the opportunity to abuse women, and they have the opportunity to abuse their power against women or take power away from women and other people who are vulnerable, like minorities. So that is the reality. The statistics are painting a really, really clear picture of what's happening in our society when it comes to victim blaming. Victims blame themselves, abusers blame victims, and then society blames victims as well. So how are victims ever to get better, and how are abusers to be held accountable if we're putting the blame on the shoulders of the victims? This doesn't make any sense. When we look at, for example, a crime like murder, right? When we look at those kind of crimes, when there's somebody laying on the floor that has been murdered, do we say, oh no, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or do we say, oh, somebody stepped in and did something to them, hurt them, and that person should be held accountable? So why can't we do the same thing with abuse? Why can't we hold abusers accountable? And what we're seeing here is that society is saying that it's okay for men to be in situations of power, and that abuse is translating to this is a situation of power, so men are right, or men have the opportunity to be there because they deserve to be in those positions. And so what we need to do as victims, if you're a victim of guilt and you are a victim of society painting you as the guilty party for abuse, go and get some counseling, because it's only through counseling and through talking to people and joining support groups that you are going to be able to stand up and say, I don't abuse other people, no matter the kind of condition that I'm in or the way that I'm doing things. I would not do this to other people. And you'll have to unpack that through therapy. So you need counseling. Whether you choose to leave your relationship or stay in your relationship, go and get some counseling, because that's going to help you to be able to get your strength back, because you deserve that, right? Okay, and yeah, you deserve to be happy and you deserve to live freely, and no one should take that away from you. To abusers, go and get some counseling because you have issues. You wouldn't be behaving in a violent way towards somebody else and thinking that it's okay if you didn't have issues. Now here's the thing, you could be in denial and might even feel like your actions are justified or whatever, but the truth of the matter is you need some counseling. So go and get some counseling, because I am of the firm belief that if you abuse someone, you abuse yourself. You're damaging yourself. That level of violence is not okay. Because you know that for certain, if someone treated you that way, you would not be happy about it. But the truth of the matter is that this is what you're doing to someone else. So, a good thing to do would be to get some counseling, right? And then for society, I want to draw your attention to the acronym that I came up with in my very first video. They came out on the first day of the 16 Days of Activism, called PAPER. It's a PAPER acronym. So the first part of the PAPER acronym is P for pray. The second part is awareness and assistance. The third part is protect, and the fourth part is end, and the fifth part is restore and rehabilitate. Pray. Let's just pray for everyone. Just take some time and support other people, right? And yourself as well. Yeah, and then awareness. Let's create awareness. Let's call out abuse or situations of abuse. Let's draw people's attention to it, and let's just assist people that are in situations of abuse however they need it. Don't try to control the situation. They already are dealing with a situation of coercive control. So what you want to do is you want to step back and ask the victim, what do you need? And then they can help you in any way that they need you to help them, right? And then protect. We want to protect victims as much as possible. Remove them from situations of abuse if you can. If you've got a space for them and maybe their children, whatever, go ahead and provide that opportunity for them. And then we want to end domestic violence in all shapes and forms, and we will do that by holding the right parties accountable and not letting guilt or societal blame shift onto the victims, and supporting them through all processes, especially in the court system and when it comes to the law, right? And then lastly, we want to restore and rehabilitate them. Let's restore people that are victims, because being a victim of domestic abuse is traumatic enough. So let's just restore victims and find a way to help them feel confident enough to go forward, to stand up, and to revive within themselves the parts that they lost because of abuse, or the parts that are hidden rather because of abuse, right? And we want to rehabilitate abusers, because we can't cross out half the population because they've done abuse to people in the past. We have to be responsible as citizens, and we need reform in this area. Okay, so scripture of the day is from Psalms 107 verse 13 to 16, and it says, Lord, help, they cried in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He led them from the darkness and deepest gloom. He snapped their chains. Let them praise the Lord for his great love and for the wonderful things he has done for them. For he broke down their prison gates of bronze. He cut apart their bars of iron. And that's that. So thank you, God, for setting us all free. Thank you, God, for setting us free from being victims of abuse and from being abusers as well. Okay, thanks so much for joining me, and don't forget to support Team C's. $1 donation means 1 pound of trash that is removed from the ocean, which is phenomenal in combating environmental abuse, which we are going to talk about in another video as well. Don't forget to pop a candle in the comment section for all of those people who are victims, for those people who are reformed abusers, and if you know somebody who has been a victim of abuse. So thanks so much for joining me. Have a phenomenal day further. Bye.